far beyond Yemen's borders. The World Food Programme says funding is needed to prevent famine in Yemen. Reporters Without Borders describe Yemen as being a high-risk country for journalists. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is English News with me, Shaza Abdelbey. The war in Yemen has deepened the ties of the Iran-Houthi partnership. Iran has built a significant influence in Yemen since 2015, and Houthis have become an important arm of Iran's foreign policy. More on story is within this report.
Iran has increased its support recently to Houthi rebels dramatically. The U.S. Justice Department announced last week that it has seized two large caches of Iranian arms, including 171 surface-to-air missiles and 8 anti-tank missiles destined for Houthi militia. The U.S. Navy seized the weapons from two vessels in the Arabian Sea while conducting routine maritime security operations, said the Justice Department. Iran's Revolutionary Guard orchestrated the arms shipments, which were destined for the Houthis, it said. Further, the U.S. government similarly seized the Iranian petroleum products from 4 foreign flag tankers in or around the Arabian Sea while en route to Venezuela. These actions represent the government's largest ever forfeiture of fuel and weapons shipments from Iran to rebel Houthis. The US, in the two cases, struck a resounding blow to the Iranian government and to the criminal networks affiliated with it. The war also bled into the surrounding waterways like the Red Sea and Bab el-Mandeb, which connects the sea to the Gulf of Aden. These waterways lead to Suez Canal and onto the Mediterranean Sea, making them crucial for international shipping and global energy supplies. Houthis have deployed drone boats into these waters, which can be piloted remotely and sent up to a target before detonating. These boats are suspected of being built with Iran's help. In the same line, the U.S. Navy announced Wednesday it tested a laser weapon and destroyed a floating target in the Mideast, a system that could be used to count bomb-laden drone boats deployed by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. Such a step by the American Navy is hugely commendable. Yet, the question remains, would that be enough to deter the Iranian aggression on Yemeni people?
Swedish Special Envoy to Yemen Peter Samani discussed with senior assistant to the Iranian Foreign Minister efforts to bring peace in Yemen. The talks dealt with a ceasefire, advancing the peace process, safer tanker lifting restrictions on imports, and Samani said efforts of the United Nations in Yemen aim at a ceasefire, lifting restrictions on imports and resuming political negotiations. The Iran diplomat stressed that there is a need to resolve the Yemeni crisis through political means, to conduct a Yemeni dialogue and to form a comprehensive government representing all parties. To have a further understanding of this issue, joining me now from New York, Irina Sickerman, a security analyst and human rights lawyer. Thank you very much for joining us, Irina.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
If I may start with the latest U.S. announcement, they seized weapons and oil shipments in the Arabian Sea, which were heading to Houthi rebels. How do you read this in view of the current Houthi militia escalation in Marib?
Unfortunately, such incidents have empowered Houthis to come back to attack again and again. Despite the airstrikes from the Arab, which cost Houthis hundreds of lives in just the latest few days, this is not the first time where Houthis were able to return after being seemingly pushed back, thanks to the steady flow of sophisticated weapons such as precision missiles, drones, and surface-to-air missiles that they receive from Iran through these shipments. And until that flow is disrupted for good, they will continue to come back. Marib is a strategically vital area for Iran because this is the last stronghold of the Arab coalition in the north, and should it fall, the Houthis will have unfettered access straight to the south and to the borders with Saudi Arabia. For that reason, any amount of weapons that they need will continue to flow steadily until they achieve their goal.
Irina, recently the U.S. envoy Tim King said in a statement that the issue for resolving the Yemeni conflict is Iran. What is your take on that?
Iran, no doubt, is the real power in Yemen. For instance, the Iranian ambassador in Sana'a, who appeared in the country seemingly through a third country and recently had to leave allegedly due to a COVID infection, he has been seen by international organizations such as the Red Cross and other humanitarian organizations more often than Houthi leadership. He had established a presence in Sana'a and was de facto in control of the operations. A recent report by Wall Street Journal claims that the Houthis were unhappy with the situation and wanted him to leave, but it is no doubt that someone else will come back as a replacement if he does not recover from whatever is ailing him, because Iran is treating Houthis as a proxy, not as a partner, and is using them to achieve their regional agenda, but does not view them as an independent power, and in exchange for providing weapons, financing, and backing, has accumulated political control inside the country and is now expanding its presence. In fact, there are now rumors of IRGC building a military base in Yemen. If true, that further consolidates Iranian control inside the country, bypassing Houthi presence and Houthi operations in the maritime region around the country.
Lastly, I want to ask you, what do you think the future scenarios of the conflict in Yemen?
Until Iran is separated from the Houthis, the conflict will continue. The Houthis have been able to gain control of the territory, of a significant chunk of territory and population inside the country, but more importantly than territorial control is their ideological hold, which they have been able to establish through intelligence networks and marital arrangements. Iran is helping them stay in power despite the fact that the country is going through a tremendous humanitarian crisis, and they have consolidated humanitarian aid in the hands of a small clique and have been discriminating about significant portions of the population and mistreating them. But because of Iran's backing them with weapons, they continue to stay in power, and they are being trained and they're becoming more sophisticated. So the key to being able to militarily defeat Houthis or else force them into some sort of a political compromise or political defeat is getting Iran out of there.
I'm afraid we have to leave it here, Irina. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for joining us. To the west coast of Yemen, the joint forces destroyed 3 Houthi crews in the Makbana district west of Taz. A military source stated that reinforcements of Iranian-backed militia were monitored. A number of Houthi militants were killed and wounded during the attack. This comes 24 hours after the destruction of an operation center in the outskirts of Al-Jarahi districts. In Ma'rib, artillery of the government forces targeted gatherings and reinforcements of Houthi militia in the southern fronts. According to sources, the attack resulted in destroying 5 military vehicles and killing all of those on board. Further battles in the outskirts of the eastern Balak Mountains ended with the death of all infiltrating Houthi militants. Brigadier Mijalli said that the militia's losses are estimated at 13 vehicles, noting that the coalition air raids destroyed 52 tanks and 8 armored vehicles. Relief organizations in Yemen reported that 11.1 million Yemeni people received food aid during the past month, despite Houthi escalation. According to the World Food Programme, more than $812 million are required to cover the needs from December to May 2022. The latest World Food Programme updates indicated that 43% of Yemenis have insufficient food consumption. To that end, the Yemeni government warned that the displaced people in Yemen are subjected to death due to low temperature and lack of shelter and food. The executive unit for the management of IDP's camps in Ma'rib said death in the camps among displaced has become a tragic reality amid winter and crumbling living conditions. Along with that, Oxfam International said the raging battles forced more than 100,000 people to flee their homes in the past 3 months. Reporters Without Borders revealed that Yemen ranked third most dangerous country in the world for journalists during 2021. The organization reported that Mexico and Afghanistan are still the most dangerous countries for journalists, followed by Yemen and India in third place. More on story is within this report.
Reporters Without Borders released the latest report on media violations in 2021 with highest number of detained. By contrast, the number killed this year was the lowest due to the relative stabilization of conflicts in the Middle East. Falling number of deaths since a peak in 2016 reflects changing dynamics in Syria, Iraq and Yemen, where a reduction in conflicts mean fewer journalists have been drawn to the region, according to the statement. The most dangerous countries were once again Mexico and Afghanistan with 7 and 6 journalist deaths respectively, followed by Yemen and India with 4 apiece. Yemen is the third most dangerous country in the world for journalists. Yemeni journalists suffer no less than the rest of those affected by war, as they make great efforts and go under life risks to convey the suffering of Yemeni people, despite violations they receive, especially from Houthi militia. Not only conflict, political instability, absence of state authority, but also the growing hostility towards the press and journalists have contributed to enshrining the impunity of the perpetrators of these crimes. The Yemeni Journalist Syndicate said that 45 journalists were killed between 2011 and September 2021, many of whom lost their lives since the outbreak of the fighting, reaching as high as 38 between 2015 and 2021. None of the perpetrators has been brought to justice. Reporters Without Borders indicated that the third most dangerous country for journalism recorded 4 deaths this year only. Mohammed Shubaita, the Yemeni Journalist Syndicate General Secretary, said that over 1,300 cases of violations have been recorded since 2015, either through website blocking, closure of news agencies and media outlets, abductions and imprisonment. Between January and September this year, 63 violations against journalists and media ranged from targeted killings, kidnapping, attacks on media houses, shutdown of media and confiscation of newspapers, to death threats, harassment and assaults. To date, 10 journalists are still under Houthi custody. 4 of them have been sentenced to death on charges of alleged treason and spying for foreign states in arbitrary trials and are held since 2015 in extremely dire conditions, subjected to torture and denied appropriate medical care, and they are mostly denied family visits. In Aden, a car explosion killed a pregnant woman, Rasha Abdullah al-Harazi, and her fetus were killed by an explosive device that was planted in the car. Her husband, Muhammad al-Utmi, a journalist too, was also critically injured in the explosion. Muhammad Qaid al-Maqri, a journalist, was kidnapped by Al-Qaeda in 2015 and has been detained ever since. Abdul Khaliq Amran, Akram al-Walidi, Harith Hamid and Tawfiq al-Mansouri were abducted by Houthi and have been sentenced to death. Meanwhile, the judicial process has been suspended in order to proceed with negotiations for their release. These unjust violations of the right to freedom of opinion and expression are globally condemned, yet they continue in a country where there is no accountability for crimes against people who convoy the worst humanitarian crisis.
The coalition announced that it thwarted a new attack by the Houthi militia carried out from Sana'a airport towards Saudi Arabia. The coalition indicated that the terrorist militia tried to target Abha airport at dawn with 3 remotely controlled drones, adding that the Sana'a airport has become a Houthi launching pad for cross-border attacks. Coming next, Arwa Nabat, an example of a Yemeni woman determined to lead in the time of war.
اضطرينا نحن أن نغادر من ذي وزحنا.
الله يستنقلكم يا محويتني الله يستنقل.
Welcome back. Teachers in various Sana'a schools carried out a general strike to protest the starvation policy made by the Houthi rebels. This comes after the rebels suspended paying their salaries. More on story is within this report.
Their last refuge is to stand up in the face of the Houthi rebels and to go off work. This is what the teachers are doing in the capital Sana'a after their financial dues were delayed. A source said the teachers in the directorates of the capital went into a strike, asking the rebels to pay them 30,000 riyals from the teachers' fund and to pay them their salaries. Rather than keeping their promises and paying the teachers to support them in the hard life they lead, the Houthi rebels threatened to fire them unless they go back to work. Sources said the rebels set up the teachers' fund to help him to receive his monthly salary. They, however, collected large sums of money from taxes, duties, and added values without paying attention to the suffering of the teacher. The rebels, moreover, halted the payment of some educational scholarships granted by the international organizations to support education. The strike caused disruption in the school daily work. Some schools stopped work because of this open and semi-complete strike. Teachers expressed dissatisfaction with the silence over their suffering. For the first time, many teachers refused to meet with the Houthi committees or to negotiate with them. The militia in turn informed the striking teachers that they will not have any due. In addition, the incentives have been cut off. They ordered teachers to attend and continue teaching in return of a so-called community participation that will be paid for them. These community participations are monthly payments imposed on students each month. According to sources, these monthly payments are being looted and only small amounts of them reach the poor teacher.
The Week of the Martyr is a new event that is organized by the Houthi rebels in the areas under their control. Local sources reported that the Houthi terrorist militia in the capital Sana'a forced the owners of gas stations to pay sums of money to revive the activity of the so-called Martyrs' Week. According to the sources, a Houthi leader threatened gas station owners to take out their license if not committed to pay money. Houthi militia has been destroying Yemeni culture heritage. The militia turned the House of Culture in Sana'a into a clothing store. This house used to host key local Arab artists. More on story is within this report.
In a new assault for culture, Houthi militia turned the House of Culture in Sana'a into a clothing store. The House of Culture is one of the most important cultural sites in Yemen. Since its opening in 2000, it has become a civilizational example as it contributed to the Yemeni culture by being a destination for cultural and artistic events. This site was visited by Gunta Grass, Muhammad Darwish, Adonis Adil Imam, Nur al-Sharif and other cultural figures, and is now a place for selling clothes. Houthis cleared out the building halls from its contents and filled it with clothes, cosmetics and shoes for selling. Ministry of Culture and Tourism and General Book Authority condemned this blatant violations committed by the rebels in Sana'a. They said that this is a deliberate insult to culture and incitement by the militia to prove that they are committed to destroy everything related to knowledge, culture, awareness, freedom, art and life. Instead, they want to raise the voice of death, destruction, racism, and their terrorist acts. The statement added, the act of turning the House of Culture into a clothing store sparked a widespread discontent among Yemeni intellectuals and activists. They said that stripping of the symbol of the culture house concludes the dark reality that Yemen lives and introduces another year of darkness in the history of the country. Yemenis considered this act an expression of the Houthis' historical hatred with science and culture. This crime is not the first in assaulting cultural institutions for what they were established. Houthi militia continue to assault everything related to Yemen's cultural heritage.
Women are the real backbone for the development of any nation. Yemeni women are determined to take up their social responsibilities, even in the time of war. More on story is within this report.
Since ancient times, Yemen has been famous throughout history for agriculture, which represented and still is one of the components of the economy and priorities of life, especially in rural agricultural areas where people depend on cultivating the land, plowing it, harvesting its crops, selling it, and benefiting from its proceeds. However, the matter here seems different when this land is related to a woman who's devoting her whole life to the land and its cultivation. She is Arwa Nabit, one of the women of Lahj Governorate who loves the agriculture field and the land.
حبيت الزراعة وأنا صغيرة وعاد العمر 8 سنين.
I loved the agriculture field since I was 8 years old. I used to watch all my family, my mother, my father, and grandparents in this field, and I started to support farmers and anyone in need in this organization I'm leading now.
Arwa Nabit is the first Yemeni woman to head an agricultural association for farmers in Lahj Governorate, where she was able to gather all the farmers around her, seeking to help them and facilitate their work, hear their complaints, and look forward to meeting their needs, believing in the priceless value of the land.
We hope that the local authorities pay attention to the farmers and support them. I'm with the weak farmer and any farmer who has a complaint. We take all the complaints and present it to the Ministry of Agriculture. We hope that all other organizations can have a look at our organization and what we do, support us and support all the farmers, and hope that we can make Lahj green as it used to be before, as now it's started to be more residential lands rather than agriculture.
Arwa Nabit is respected and appreciated by all farmers, based on her supportive work and many services towards farmers and their lands, and facilitating their work in a way that contributes to its revival.
She is the first leader of an organization for water users in Tuban district. She is respected and appreciated from all farmers and from the local authorities. It's been a year since she took this role. She's doing a great job in leading this organization. We ask all women to join her.
We thank Arwa for her great efforts and follow up on Saadin land, the solar system and the seeds. She presented a lot of services and seeds to many people and farmers.
Arwa practices her work daily in a diligent manner, with dedication and sincerity, starting from the early morning hours until the evening, moving from one valley to another and from one farm to another, thus becoming the first Yemeni woman to head an agricultural association at the level of Lahj Governorate in particular and Yemen in general. A unique model that reflects the ambition of a Yemeni woman and her love for her land, at the same time dreaming about the return of agricultural activity strongly for Lahj to return to what it was known as before, the Green Lahj.
Headlines. Iran continues to support Houthi rebels and expands the war beyond Yemen's borders. The World Food Programme says funding is needed to prevent famine in Yemen. Reporters Without Borders describe Yemen as being a high-risk country for journalists. This is the end of the news. It was Shazab Delbei. Thank you for watching.